Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're coming to you live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios, like always, right here in Lubbock, Texas, and we're on the radio at 98.7 Walk by Faith and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. Hope you guys had a fantastic day. Hope you guys, all you guys that are out there watching this on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, hope you guys had a great day too. Tonight's a book review night. I'm really excited about tonight. I'm excited about the show. That we've got a book I got given to me. I looked in the side of it. It's Dr. Michael Dunn gave me this book. Some of you guys know Dr. Dunn. He's an eye doctor here in town and the Family Vision Center. And he brought this book over here, I don't know, some time ago. Brought it over to the office, and I'm just now getting around to reviewing it. So we used to do our book review nights on Wednesday nights, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to review the book. We're just going to talk about it. I think it's a great subject, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Dr. Daniel G. Amen, MD. We'll talk about him in just a minute, too. He is very well qualified to write this book, very well qualified to teach us some things. And in case you guys haven't heard about him, we'll get into that. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. You know, I listened to Dr. Amen several times on like Instagram or YouTube on some videos and stuff, and I didn't really know much about him or who he was or where he came from, and because you learn all this. There's so much new going on out there in the world, especially when it comes to social media, that you don't always know for sure where these people get their credentials and where they've been, what they've done in their lifetime, and all that sort of thing. So I saw him pop up, on social media a few different times. Kind of looked at it and be like, I don't know who this is, but it's interesting what he's talking about. He's talking about your brain, and I'm really interested in our brains and how our brains function and how they really dictate the quality of our life. The quality of our brain dictates the quality of our life. So all the things that we do to take care of it. So I just started listening to Dr. Amen, not really even knowing who he was. And so that time went on like that. And then I got a little bit more curious, and then I kind of looked into him a little bit. And then right about that time, you know how things work. Right about that time, all of a sudden, Dr. Dunn shows up and gives me this book. So that's what we're talking about tonight. So we're just going to get after it. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Now, this is the breakthrough program for conquering anxiety, depression, obsessiveness, anger, and impulsiveness. That's the name of this book right here. And there's several people. Revolutionary. Dr. Amen shows how your brain can become your worst enemy and how, with the proper treatment, your best friend. That's from Martin Stein, MD, Associate Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at George Washington University. And here's one from Robert Hunt, MD, Associate Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at Vanderbilt School of Medicine. Opens the door to assessment and interventions that can change your life. Brain prescriptions that really work. So, in this breakthrough bestseller, you'll see scientific evidence that your anxiety, depression, anger, obsessiveness, and impulsiveness could be related to how specific structures in your brain work. You're not stuck with the brain you're born with. Here are just a few of neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Amen's surprising and effective brain prescriptions that can help heal your brain and change your life. I had this conversation with a new patient today, or a new client of the office, not a new patient, but a new client. And he says he's pretty sure he got his first concussion in the 6th grade. And he made this statement to me. He said, my brain is broken. And I was like, I'm not going to buy that. That could be true. It could be true. They could have concussions. The concussions could have done damage. There could have been damage that has gone to the point where it is irreversible. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't start there. I don't start with the idea that that your brain is damaged beyond repair, and I didn't really know it. But it's like these guys came before me. Dr. Amen came before me, and he he did the work for a long time beforehand. So to quell anxiety and panic, use simple breathing techniques to immediately calm inner turmoil. To fight depression, learn how to kill ants. He calls ants automatic negative thoughts. And we'll get into that a little bit in the book. To curb anger, follow the Amen anti-anger diet and learn the nutrients that calm rage. To conquer impulsiveness and learn to focus, develop total focus on the one-page miracle. And to stop obsessive worrying, follow the Get Unstuck writing exercise and learn other problem solving exercises. So, Daniel Amen is a clinical neuroscientist, child and adolescent psychiatrist, and medical director of the Amen Clinics for Behavioral Medicine in Fairfield, California. The recipient of awards from the American Psychiatric Association, the Baltimore, D.C. Institute for Psychoanalysis, and the U.S. Army, Dr. Amen is a nationally recognized expert on the relationship between the brain and behavior and on attention deficit disorder, and is the author of several books, including Windows into the ADD Mind and Firestorms in the Brain. So that's a little bit of a introduction. I got a little bit more. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Maryland in West Germany campus from 74 to 75. Then he went to Orange Coast College, got an Associate's of Arts degree in 75 and 76. Then he went to Southern California College, now Vanguard University, and got a bachelor's degree between 1976 and 1978. Then after he graduated, he went to Oral Roberts University and got his doctorate of medicine degree in 1982. Then he worked at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, medical internship, Walter Reed Army Medical Center psychiatric residency training. That was from 83 to 85. Child Adolescent Psychiatric Fellow, Tripler Army Medical Center in Hawaii, 85 through 87. Nuclear Brain Imaging Independent Fellowship Study, including 200 hours of nuclear physics and related science at the Institute of Nuclear Medical Education and 1,000 hours of clinically supervised training, leading to a California nuclear brain imaging license in 1995. So, Dr. Amen has lots and lots of experience. He's got a lot of experience studying the brain. He's probably as experienced as any human being anywhere. It says right here, this is an updated version of this. He's a physician, adult and child psychiatrist, founder of the Amen Clinics with now 11 locations across the United States. It has the world's largest database of brain scans for psychiatry, totaling more than 225,000 SPECT scans, SPECT scans, on patients from 155 countries. So he's been around for a long time, and he's done a lot of stuff. And he became a celebrity. He became a celebrity, and he worked with actors and musical artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, and influencers, all kinds of different kinds, YouTube and Instagram. He's a 12-time New York Times best-selling author, and he's got some new ones. This last one, Change Your Brain Every Day, simple daily practices to strengthen your mind, memory, mood, focus, energy, habits, and relationship. And that was released March 23rd of 2023. So Dr. Amen knows what he's talking about, and he got some attention by taking care of some popular people, and that allowed him to share his message. The older I get, the more I understand that. I didn't understand it for a long time. It took me a long time. So you can't hate on these guys when they become celebrities, because it gives them a platform to share the information that they're trying to share with you so that we can all be better. Now, you still want to run it through your filter, your own filter. Make sure that you know that you feel pretty good about about what's going on, and you want to make sure that you have a lot of confidence in the person that you're listening to. And so, but so let's get into it. The thing about the book part that I read, and is that the copyright of the book, it's really interesting, and I kind of debated whether or not we should carry through with it, because the copyright of the book is 1998, and it's like, whoa, okay, hang on a second. Now we're getting back 25 years that we've over 25 years that this book was written, and I thought, wait a minute, is it going to say the things that we know today, or is it going to be too outdated? And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and introduce it. I'm going to read I'm going to read through some of the concepts of it, and I'm going to introduce it. And if you're interested, and what we'll do is, if there's something that I have learned that's current that I can pick out as we're going through the book, then what I'll do is I'll say, wait, you know what? Here's some things that I don't necessarily agree with, or things that might have changed. And I don't have a hard copy of the most current version of this book, the updated one, but I have been listening to it on my phone, and so there may be a few areas that he's learned some stuff. He didn't get all those 225,000 spec scans. He didn't have them all in 1998. So he's developed those, and that's just a way of looking at your brain. It's an image. It's kind of like looking at an MRI of your brain, but it gives a different pattern. You can really see some damaging things of the brain, and we know we've talked a lot about it. We talked some last night about attention, and the 5 levels of attention. We went through all that last night, and how attention is distributed. 4 parts of that attention is in your right hemisphere. Focused attention is in your left hemisphere. So there may be some of these things that Dr. McGilchrist has taught me, that when we get to them in the book, that we can talk about, well, maybe I don't necessarily still see it that way. And I don't necessarily know that Dr. Amen still sees it this way either. He may have updated. I just don't have the copy for that. So let's just get into it. So the way he sets the book up is he puts it in his chapters are, if I can get to it, there we go. He gets into the images, into the mind. The first part of it, a prelude into the brain and the behavior, the deep limbic system. And then what he starts doing is he starts breaking down the brain, and he'll have a chapter on the brain, the part, like the limbic system. And then the next chapter, he'll have prescriptions, deep limbic system prescriptions. And then he goes to the next part, the basal ganglia. And then the next chapter is basal ganglia prescriptions. And then the prefrontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex prescriptions. The cingulate system and the cingulate system prescription. So he'll walk us through, as he's going through the book, he'll walk us through the different parts of the brain, and then he'll give us the subscriptions that go along with it. And then when he gets to the end, he gets into the drug violence in the brain. He gets into brain patterns that interfere with intimacy, and he gets into when and how to seek professional care, and then questions about our humanity, and then summary of a way to optimize brain function and break bad brain habits. So that last one, the do's and don'ts, is just a list. It's just a list of things, and the do's and don'ts, and I'll read them when we get to the back part of the brain, and we can go from there. So let's just listen to. I'm going to read some of this introduction for you, so that you can kind of get a feel for some of the things that Dr. Amen has to say. Your brain is the hardware of your soul. It is the hardware of your very essence as a human being. You cannot be who you are, really. You cannot be who you really want to be unless your brain works right. How your brain works determines how happy you are, how effective you feel, and how well you interact with others. And we spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time talking about the brain, right? I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about how it works, what interferes with it. The subluxation, the subluxation is interference in the nervous system. The brain is the nervous system. The brain and the spinal cord is the nervous system. That's my whole entire life about what we do. What are the things that interfere with it? What are the things that are damaging to it? Because if you really are trying to be who you want to be, your brain needs to work right. It's vital that your brain needs to work right. Your brain patterns help you or hurt you with your marriage, parenting skills, work, and religious beliefs, along with your experiences of pleasure and pain. How many of us would like to improve all of those, right? Except the pain part, right? If you are anxious, depressed, obsessive compulsive, prone to anger, or easily distracted, you probably believe these problems are all in your head. In other words, you believe your problems is purely psychological. However, research that I and others have done shows that the problem is related to the physiology of the brain. And the good news is that we have proof that you can change the physiology. You can fix what's wrong for many problems. Remember, we started off the week talking about anxiety in the child, and we started talking about why we're having an 8 or 10-year-old child taking anxiety medication. And it's like, hey, we can change that brain. We can change the physiology of that brain. That's where the physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress is important. We can do that. You think, well, it's I'm depressed and my brain is broken, and that's the only hope I have. And I want to share with you that it's not just me that thinks that, and I'm not authentic when it comes to that. The things that I share with you on this show, some of them are authentic, like, because you can't get some of this anywhere else. That's for sure. But these concepts and this neurology, it's not authentic. It's learned. These are things that I've learned, and I learned some of this stuff from people like I didn't even know it, but I learned some of this stuff from people like Dr. Amen, because he laid down the foundation for us that have come along after him that are sharing the same information, but he's been trying to teach people that's for way longer than I've been working on it. In 1998, when he wrote this book, I was coaching the defensive tackles at Texas Tech, and we had the number 8 defense in the country. You can go look that up. That's a fact. We had the number 8 total defense in the country at Texas Tech in 1998. I was not thinking about brains in 1998. I was thinking about stopping offenses in 1998 and winning football games. So way before I ever thought about brains for the first time, Dr. Amen was doing research on this, and he's trying to share this stuff with us. Until very recently, scientists could only speculate about the brain's role in our personality and decision-making skills. We did not have advanced tools to look at the functioning of the brain, and thus made many false assumptions about its impact on our lives. With the advent of sophisticated brain imaging techniques, we are now answering questions about the brain's role in behavior at a phenomenal pace. Questions that have practical applicability to your life. From relationships at home and at work to understanding what makes you a unique being. I have been involved in brain imaging research for the past 10 years. This was in 98, okay? I first began studying the brain with sophisticated quantitative EEG brainwave studies. That's what we have in the office. We have the Brain Master Quantitative EEG and the neurofeedback now at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. This is something he's been working on for years. And in the last 8 years, I have used nuclear medicine brain study called SPECT, SPECT, single photon emission computer tomography, which measures cerebral blood flow and metabolic activity patterns. That's what that's all about. These last 10 years have been both exhilarating and frustrating. They have been exhilarating because through these studies, we now have visual evidence of brain patterns that correlate with behavior, such as tendencies towards depression, anxiety, distractibility, obsessiveness, and violence. These physical, this physical evidence of phenomenon, mostly thought of as purely psychological in origin, has revolutionized the way others and I practice psychiatric medicine. We can now show patterns, we can now show patients and their families the physical brain, evidence of problems, helping them to be more accepting and compliant with treatment. We have more information to make more effective treatment decisions with complex cases than ever before. And we use the information from this research to educate the public on the effects of drug abuse, head injuries, and even negative thinking on the brain. This has truly been amazing. It has also been frustrating time because dissemination of these new insights has been slower than I would like. There is natural resistance in the scientific community to dramatic shifts in thinking. Once a scientist uncovers new information, it needs to go through a peer review process that can take years. I am pleased that the brain imaging work I and others have pioneered is continuing to gain acceptance from the medical and scientific community. Now that was back in '98, and it's way past that now. I mean, it's way past the point. Matter of fact, it's probably gone a little bit too far, especially with the development of social media and all the things that go on. Sometimes I think now the acceptance has gone too far, and we're lost in some of the treatments that we're doing. We're out there. We're just now anything goes, right? Because if you say it on the internet, it must be true. And so we've got all kinds of things that I don't think is necessarily sound for us, but you as the consumer and even me as the consumer, we don't necessarily know those things, right? In the meantime, the knowledge gained from the research is helping people across North America. It can help you too. Seeing is believing. I was not a brain image researcher by design. After medical school at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I did my psychiatric internship and residency at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I always believed that there was a strong connection between spiritual health and mental health, and he gets into it in the book quite a bit. He does talk about that a lot. Nothing in my training dissuaded me from that idea, but little did I know that the connection could go both ways. I then did a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I learned how stressful early beginnings could set up lifelong problems. That first 7 years is very, very important. In those first 12 years, last night we talked on the show, and we had the limbic system. And while we were talking about the limbic system, and we were talking about the emotional brain, and we've talked about that a lot, that lower level reptilian mammalian brain. And I can't get it for some reason. My board is kind of cut in half. But we had talked about that. We talked about that emotional part, and that emotional part is being developed from birth to age 12. That lower brain is being developed, and what Dr. Amen's going to say in this book is going to show us that there are areas that get set based on whether or not a child receives love or they don't receive love. If they receive proper nurturing from their mother, if they receive proper care from their mother, if they receive proper attention, then that baby starts to develop neurological pathways that give them confidence and security as they move into the future. But if that baby misses out on that stuff, then there's an absence of those pathways, which can lead to all kinds of anxiety and depression and problems in the future. And so it would be something that would need to be addressed. In Hawaii, I began to write about applying mental health principles to everyday life, in relationships, at work, and with ourselves. I wanted to teach large groups of people how to be more effective day to day. On the basis of my work, I was selected as a fellow in the prestigious group of the Advancement of Psychiatry and received a research award from the American Psychiatric Association. In 1986, I wrote a program titled Breaking Through How to Be Effective Every Single Day of Your Life, about identifying and overcoming behaviors that hold people back from success. He got a lot of pushback right there when he started getting into it. In 1990, he was working in a psychiatric hospital in Fairfield, California. It was the director of the dual diagnosis treatment unit, caring for people with both substance abuse and psychiatric problems. So that's when he started getting into the SPECT scans and started looking at the brain in a different manner. And as soon as we get back from the break, because we're going to take a break, I'll get into some of those things. So you guys stick around with us. We'll be right back. I'll keep reading a little bit of this for us on the radio. I was the director of the dual diagnosis treatment unit, caring for people with both substance abuse and psychiatric problems, and I saw other patients as well. One day on ground rounds, I heard Dr. Jack Paldy, a local nuclear medicine physician, give a lecture on brain SPECT imaging. SPECT studies are nuclear medicine studies that measure blood flow and activity in the brain. What the idea is that areas of the brain that are functioning very highly will have a high metabolic rate, which will mean they will need a lot of nutrients, which will mean they will get a lot of blood flow. Parts of the brain that aren't functioning at a very high metabolic rate won't need much blood flow. So you can study the blood flow to determine which part of the brain is actually functioning and how it's functioning. And so that's kind of what that whole thing was all about. The same week Dr. Paldy gave his lecture, Alan Zemetkin, MD from the National Institutes of Health, published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine on the use of PET, positron emission tomography studies, in adults with attention deficit disorder. Since ADD was one of my specialties, the article really caught my interest. He demonstrated that adults with ADD tried to concentrate. Dr. Zemetkin demonstrated that when adults with ADD tried to concentrate, there was a decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, rather than expected increase seen in normal control adults. Here was physical evidence of a problem many people thought was psychological. A third event that week helped me integrate what I'd learned. I met Sally. So I want to stop right there and talk about that for just a second. And I want to use this as a teaching moment to talk about what we know about right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Dr. Zemetkin demonstrated that when adults with ADD tried to concentrate, there was decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex. Let me get us back on the radio. Hang on one second. Okay, everybody, we're back. We're talking about change your brain, change your life. And this is Dr. Amen in the introduction talking about when he first learned about SPECT scans. And so he's talking about Dr. Zemetkin, who was from the National Institutes of Health, published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine using the use of PET scans in adults with attention deficit disorder. And what he found was when those adults with attention deficit disorder tried to concentrate, there was a decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, rather than expected increase seen in normal control adults. Here, the physical evidence of a problem many people thought was psychological. Later, he met this lady named Sally. Sally, a 40-year-old woman, had been hospitalized under his care for depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideas. In my clinical interview with her, I discovered that she had many adult ADD symptoms, such as short attention span, distracted ability, disorganization, and restlessness. Now, what do we know based on last night's show? What do we know about an adult that has ADD? What would we say about that adult that has ADD based on last night's show? And you guys, I know all you guys out there listened to the show and took notes and was ready to answer this question tonight, right? What we know about, and I've only got half of the brain written right there. Think about what he just said, and think about the 4 levels of attention that we have: sustained, vigilance, alertness, divided, and focused. Okay? Think about what we wrote last night and what we were talking about. Don't pay any attention to that. I can't figure out how to get it off there. Now let's talk about Sally. Sally, a 40-year-old woman, has been hospitalized under my care for depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideas. In my clinical interview with her, I discovered that she had many adult ADD symptoms, such as a short attention span. Attention of what? A short attention span. A short focused attention span. What would be an indicator of a short attention span? If we were to analyze that, what would she actually be doing? If she had a short attention span, she would be focusing on something and then changing, looking over there, and focusing on something and looking over there, and focusing on something. She wouldn't be able to stay on. She wouldn't be able to stay focused. Why wouldn't she be able to stay focused? Because she's being vigilant. She's being alert. She's got this sustained attention around her, and she's got divided attention. That's all right hemisphere activity. She's been hospitalized with anxiety and depression. And anxiety and depression is an increase or decrease function of the right hemisphere. Okay? She has a short attention span, distractibility. See, I think when we look at certain things, we look at them and we call it distractibility. But we don't look at the other part of the ability. We think the distractibility is the ability of her to get distracted. But we don't really think about it from a standpoint. Flip the coin over and think about it from the other side and say she is a master. She has master ability to not focus. That'd be one way to look at it, right? She has the master ability not to focus. Okay, Jason, what are you talking about? Okay, she has high levels of distractibility. No. Okay, another way of saying that is she has high levels of vigilance or alertness or divided attention on the other side. Right? She's distracted because her right brain is looking for all kinds of threats. That's where she's distracted. She's not distracted. Her right brain's working great, but we call it distractibility. That's what I'm trying to say. Disorganization and restlessness. Yeah, why would you rest? You're not going to rest in the middle of a tiger fight. You're not going to rest if you have if you're overactive in that right hemisphere, right? She had a son with ADD. A frequent tip to diagnosing ADD in adults. Here's a new one I didn't necessarily know. If you have a child with ADD, that's a frequent tip in adults, and that you also might have that same issue. Despite her IQ of 140, she had never finished college, and she was employed below her ability as a laboratory technician. I decided to order a SPECT, a SPECT scan study on her, a SPECT study. Sally's studies were abnormal. At rest, she had good overall brain activity, especially in the prefrontal cortex. But when she was asked to perform math problems, an exercise to challenge her ability to concentrate, She had marked decreased activity across her whole brain, especially in the prefrontal cortex. With that information, I placed her on a low dose of Ritalin and brain stimulant used to treat ADD in children and adults. She had a wonderful response. Her mood was better and she was less anxious. She could concentrate for longer periods of time. She eventually went back to school and finished her degree. No longer did she think of herself as an underachiever, but rather as someone who needs treatment for a medical problem. Seeing the SPECT pictures was very powerful for Sally. She said, having ADD is not my fault. It's a medical problem, just as someone who needs glasses. Sally's experience led me to believe that SPECT might have a powerful application in decreasing the stigma many patients feel when they are diagnosed with emotional, learning, or behavioral problems. Sally could see the problem wasn't all in her head. The scan and her response to medication changed her whole perception of herself. Yes, we've talked about it lots of times. I don't care which physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress. All three of these, chemical stress and physical stress. So you can have mental emotional stress and have some sort of problem with anxiety or depression or concentration issues or any of those sort of things, or you can fall off a ladder. It, people have an easier time talking about falling off a ladder, or you flipped a four-wheeler or something like that, and maybe it wasn't your fault. You didn't really understand exactly what was causing it, but you caused it's a physical trauma, and it's very common to have a physical trauma. But if you have a mental emotional trauma, you don't want to talk about that sometimes, because you as the patient and me as a patient, we together will put too much emphasis on that because it's mental emotional. We don't want to talk about it. But as the provider, I don't see it as any different between you having anxiety or depression, or you having low back pain, or you having some sort of issue because you lifted a couch that was too heavy. You can lift a couch and hurt yourself, or you can have anxiety and have low back pain, and both of them to me have equal weight. It's just, where are you getting disrupted? And I think this is a good example because Sally could see that the problem wasn't all in her head, which is really funny because it was all in her head. Her brain wasn't working right. It wasn't made up. That's the thing that I think is we need to differentiate. When someone says, "Hey, I just think this is all in your head," what they're trying to say to you is that you're just making all this up. What I think is, it's in your head. It's the way that your brain fires. You can have ADD. It's because of the way that your brain is fired. It's actually a physical trauma. And if you'll ever take yourself there, if you'll ever take yourself to that point to where you actually understand, hey, this is actually neurologically an interference in my nervous system. If you will go there, the next progression that you will find as a human being, the next progression that you will find is that you can almost start to explain every behavior on the planet. You can really start to understand people. You're going to be frustrated by it. You're going to be frustrated because you've been wanting to say it's all in their personality. They're just a pain. That dude's just lazy. That dude's just irritating. He's just a punk. Like, I don't like that guy. He's just a punk. But really, if you would, once you get to this level, what you'll start to understand is he's not a punk. His brain's not working right. His brain's not working right. I got some family members like that. Their brains aren't working right. I'm not going to call any of them out tonight, but you think, well, they're just an ass or whatever, right? No, their brain's not working right. With Sally's enthusiasm and positive response to treatment fresh in my mind, I ordered some more spec studies on um, my most resistant patients. Many patients' previously treatment failures began to get better when I identified the SPECT, the part of their brain that wasn't working, and targeted treatment to that area. After their series of events in 1990, my colleagues and I began to do clinical research with SPECT on a wide variety of patients. Our research confirmed the work of others and expanded the body of knowledge in new directions, especially in the areas of violence, obsessiveness, and difficult personality temperaments. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've learned too. That's what he's saying. In doing this research, I have seen with my own eyes the brain spec patterns that show abnormalities that interfere with behavior. He's seen that. He's seen the spec studies of the abnormalities that interfere with behavior. These brain abnormalities sabotage my patients' efforts to improve their lives and send interrupting signals to the changes they are trying to make. I have seen how correcting or normalizing abnormal brain function can change people's lives and even their very souls. Person after person who have previously been treated failure have had previously been a treatment failure began to improve through prescriptions targeted at optimizing the brain's physical function. That's where we get into it a little bit different because he's a medical doctor and psychiatrist. And so he's going to look at the scan. He's going to say, this is where the brain's not functioning. And then he's going to look in his toolbox to determine how he's going to treat the patient. And so he's gonna use what he has available and what tools there are. Now, in 1998, he might have done it different, and what his book said now is definitely different than what it was in 1998. But his toolbox was medicine, and you got to understand that when you go to a practitioner, the practitioner is going to look in his toolbox or her toolbox and look to see what tools I have to fix your problem. And if that person has a medication to fix your problem, then they're going to recommend a medication. If they don't have a medication to fix your problem, they have to work harder. I promise you. They have to work harder to fix your problem. They have to get more in depth about where your problem comes from. They have to look at you from a whole person standpoint. They have to create a treatment plan that's based on all of you. You can say, well, it was my physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses that caused my problem. But if I have a drug and all I have to do is give you a drug to address and block that particular problem, you're going to be happy. But you're not going to have dealt with any of those physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses. And from a wellness perspective, what's going to happen to you is they're going to come back around on you. They're going to, just like that piece of tape that's over your light on your dash, or when your car light comes on. You put that piece of tape to cover up that engine light. It doesn't solve the problem of the engine. It just makes the symptom go away for the moment. And that's what happens with the drugs. And that's where later on, I think later on in his career, he started to see that, and he started to, when he had a chance, he started to use some supplements. He even makes some recommendations here in the book, and I'll get to them here in just a minute. This was such a simple concept. Let me see. Person after person who had previously been a treatment failure began to improve through prescriptions targeted to optimize the brain's physical functioning. This was such a simple concept. When your brain works right, so can you. When your brain doesn't work right, neither can you. And he's got it in italicized. It's so true. When your brain works right, you have a chance to work right. If your brain does not work right, you do not have a chance to work right. If your brain is not working right, you are not working right. That's why you have to. The lady last week that said, I went to my doctor and she gave me a clean bill of health. I'm like, your doctor did not analyze brain function. So how can you have a clean bill of health if you didn't get any of your brain function analyzed? Right? I don't think you can, and neither does Dr. Amen. If your brain does not work right, neither can you. The implication was profound. Various parts of the brain influence our behavior. Using SPECT studies, I was more effective at pinpointing trouble spots and providing more appropriate interventions. Seeing these scans caused me to challenge many of my basic beliefs about people, character, free will, and good and evil that had been ingrained in me as a Catholic schoolboy. When the physical functioning of the brain was optimized through the use of medications, nutrition, and targeted psychological exercises, people who had previously been unable to change developed a capacity for new skills and behaviors. They developed more access to productive brain activity and more ability to make changes, even though they had always had the will to change. A major shift occurred in my thinking, uncovering new possibilities for the patients who had been left behind. Remember what we always talk about? Like, we don't need to have a conversation about getting better as much as we just need to get on our feet and start moving. Just get on your feet and start moving. Start walking. Start walking every night. Walk every night for a month, and then let's have a conversation about what it is you're dealing with. Because that's exactly what he's saying right here. Even though they had always had the will to change, now all of a sudden we could target the way their brain was functioning and help them change. Because they had the will to change didn't mean they had the neurology to change. But you're not going to get the neurology to change if you don't start, if you don't seek, you don't get on your feet and move your feet. If you don't start getting yourself moving forward, then you'll never be able to get there. And once you start moving forward, then you start changing the brain. You start changing the brain. Over the next 8 years, I conducted more than 5,000 brain studies. The lessons from the brain taught me without optimal brain function, it is hard to be successful in any aspect of life, whether it's in relationships, work, schooling, feeling about yourself, or even your feelings about God, no matter how hard you try. Indeed, the first steps to being successful is to understand and optimize the working patterns of the brain. Yeah, it's so cool, really, because who taught me, right? I mean, it was Dr. Hall, like a combination of what I learned in chiropractic school, years of work, Dr. Hall in the functional neurology, Dr. McGilchrist in the Master and his Emissary, Dr. Peterson in the Maps of Meaning, like all those things. It's like it was an accumulation of this whole thing, and that's the same exact thing that Dr. Amen's saying right there. By enhancing the physical functioning of the brain, I also enhance my patient's potential for success in every area of their life. If we're working on your brain, we're working on every area of your life. First, optimize the hardware and circuitry of the brain. Then put in new programs. The brain imaging work provided insights that have revolutionized the way that I understand and treat patients. These insights are the foundation of the book. I am only one of a handful of psychiatrists in the world who are licensed in nuclear brain imaging. Currently, I am the medical director of a large neuropsychiatric clinic in California, 40 miles northeast of San Francisco. And so he gets into that. The purpose of the book is to explain how the brain works, what happens when things go wrong, and how to optimize brain function. You will be introduced into the 5 brain systems that are most intimately involved with our behavior and how the makeup of what makes us uniquely human. You'll learn about the deep limbic system at the center of the brain. It is the bonding and mood control center. Being connected to others is essential to humanity. Yet, when this is part of the brain is off kilter, people struggle with moodiness and negativity. Being connected to others is essential to humanity. It's the number one thing that we say, the number one thing you could do to keep your brain healthy is to be social. The number 2 thing you can do to keep your brain healthy is to get on your feet and walk. And number 3 thing you can do is get your eyes up and move them back and forth. Those are all things that you could do your own. Now, some of the other things that you could do, we're actually going to have to carry this over because this is taking longer than I thought. The deep limbic system, the basal ganglia, this large structure deals with the brain. Within the brain, the large structures deep within the brain control the body's idling speed. When this part of the brain works too hard, anxiety, panic, fearfulness, and conflict avoidance are often the result. The prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain helps you stay focused, make plans, control impulses, and make good or bad decisions. When it is underactive, people have problems with supervising themselves and also have significant problems with attention span, focus, organization, and follow through. The cingulate, a part of the brain that runs longitudinally through the middle part of the frontal lobes, is the part of the brain I call your gear shifter. It allows you to shift attention from thought to thought and between behaviors. When this part of the brain is overactive, people have problems getting stuck in certain loops and thoughts or behaviors. Understanding its function will help you deal with repetitive worry. That was one of the things I got out of that. And lastly, the temporal lobes. They're involved in memory, understanding language, facial recognition, and temper control. When there are problems, especially in the left temporal lobe, people are more prone to temper flare-ups, rapid mood shifts, and memory and learning problems. Optimizing this part of the brain may help your experience in inner peace for the first time in your life. When he gets into it, and he gets into the prescriptions and the things that he talks about in the book. Some of the things that one of the things that he talks about, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, but if you want, from a supplement standpoint, omega-3 fatty acids, and his level is 5.6 grams. So he's like, hey, look, you got to get your fish oil. You got to get your omega-6 fatty acids with your EPA and your DHA because it's vital for your brain. Dr. Amen talks about that. It's vital for your brain to get your omega-6-3 ratio under control and to get your omega-3 fatty acids going, okay? Another supplement that he talks about is phosphatidylserine. And this is something that we actually carry in the office that is a supplement that you can use for your brain. He's also a big believer in ginkgo biloba, the herb or the nutrients ginkgo biloba, if you've ever tried that. So there's only a couple of people, if you're prone to epileptic seizures, he doesn't recommend that. I think that was what he said. But for the most of us, those 3 things, and then the other one is a supplement called SAM-E. SAM-E is the other main supplement. Now, you can go to Dr. Amen. You can go to Brain MD by Dr. Daniel Amen. It's brainmd.com. And you can go to the supplement store. You can go to his bookstore. You can go read about his blog. You can get lots of information right there. And his supplement store has got all of these supplements and all the different packs. But you'll notice the omega-3s is that's every one of the brain and body powder, brain and body power max. You're going to get your omega-3s in that whole thing. So, hey, we ran out of time. We'll cover a little bit more of this tomorrow night. I hope you guys have a great evening. And we will be back tomorrow night with more from the book. You guys have a great night.